Long ago lived Joseph the Dreamer, who lived a very interesting life, filled with twists and turns. Early on in Joseph's life, he realized he had the ability to read the meaning of dreams, and this helped him understand God's plan and allowed him to help his people. Jacob and Rachel had 11 boys and 1 girl in total. Although Jacob loved all of his children, it was clear that Joseph was his favorite, as Jacob was already pretty old when Joseph was born to him. Joseph was 17 when his father gave him his famous coat, a beautiful cloak that shone with every color of the rainbow. The love and affection Joseph received from their father caused great jealousy in Joseph's brothers. And so, when Joseph was just a young boy, he was tricked and sold into slavery by his brothers. He was taken to the land of Egypt and led a life filled with interesting adventures. After many years, Joseph rose to power and became an important figure in Egypt and for the Israelites. But he could not have led this incredible life without his ability to read and interpret the meaning of dreams. Throughout his life, Joseph interpreted both his own dreams and the dreams of those around him, revealing their true meaning and sharing wisdom that got him out of some sticky situations. Throughout his life, there were 6 important dreams that Joseph listened to and revealed the true meaning of to those around him. Let's take a look at these 6 dreams and what we can learn from Joseph's readings. The first 2 of Joseph's 6 important dreams occurred when he was still but a young boy, working as a shepherd on his father's farm. One day, as Joseph and his family all gathered for dinner, Joseph decided to tell his family of the 2 strange dreams he had had.
Listen, family, I have something to tell you. I had 2 very strange dreams. I would like to tell you all about them.
Oh, great, here we go again. Joseph thinks he's so great that we should all have to listen to everything he has to say. Yeah, keep it to yourself, Joseph. We don't want to hear it.
Now, boys, settle down. Joseph, let us hear about these dreams of yours.
Thank you, Father. Well, in this dream, we were all out in the field, gathering bunches of wheat for the harvest. Then, all the bundles came together in the middle of the field. Only my bundle stood up perfectly straight. All of your bundles gathered around it and bowed down to my bundle standing up straight. Isn't that interesting?
His brothers laughed at this dream and mocked Joseph for it. They were annoyed by the thought of bowing down to Joseph.
Are you serious, Joseph?
You think we should bow to you?
What on earth are you saying, Joseph? Do you think your dream means that we are all going to be your servants?
You're crazy.
Okay, my brothers, okay, never mind. I shall tell you another story, the story of my second dream.
We don't want to hear it.
Father, please make him be quiet.
Hush now. Let your brother speak. Go on, Joseph.
Thank you, Father. In the second of my dreams, I saw the sun, the moon, and 11 stars, and they all stopped and bowed down to me.
The second dream annoyed Joseph's brothers even more, and now they grew angry with him. They appealed to their father to tell Joseph he was being ridiculous.
Father, listen to this madness. Joseph thinks he's better than all of us, and now he tells us of these dreams where we all bow to him.
He should be punished for saying such things.
But Jacob listened to his dear son Joseph and quietened his other son's anger.
No, my boys, this is not madness, and Joseph will not be punished. These dreams have been revealed to him by God. Now, enough arguing. Everyone finish their food, and then we must get back to work.
Joseph's brothers did not forget their anger as they worked the fields. In fact, it was these two dreams that pushed Joseph's brothers to hatch a plan to rid themselves of Joseph once and for all. It was because Joseph shared these dreams, in which he saw that his brothers would eventually bow to him, that he was sold to traders, taken to Egypt, and all of his troubles began. When he first arrived in Egypt, Joseph's hard work and good nature earned him the trust and respect of his master, Potiphar. But this good fortune did not last long. Potiphar's wife had fallen in love with Joseph and offered herself to him. When he rejected her, she was upset and lied to Potiphar, saying that Joseph had tried to betray him. Potiphar had no choice but to punish Joseph for the sin he did not actually commit and sent him to jail. It was while in prison that Joseph interpreted the next pair of important dreams. See, in his cell, Joseph was joined by two employees of the Pharaoh's cupbearer and the chief baker of the palace. As they sat in prison together, the cupbearer mentioned that he had had a strange dream.
Indeed, I had a very strange dream last night, and I can't at all figure out what it might mean.
Actually, I have the ability to interpret dreams. It's true. If you tell me your dream, I can tell you what it meant.
Is that so? Well, what happened was I saw 3 vine branches. They immediately blossomed and grapes appeared. The Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I was able to squeeze the grapes into his cup and hand it to the Pharaoh myself. What do you think the dream means?
Aha! The 3 branches mean 3 days, and the grapes in the cup mean you will return to your position. In 3 days' time, the Pharaoh will show you mercy and restore you to your position as cupbearer. When this happens, please remember that I told you the meaning of this dream and help me get out of prison.
The cupbearer was impressed and agreed to help Joseph. Seeing that Joseph really could read dreams, the baker spoke about his own dream and asked him to help.
In my dream, I saw 3 baskets of bread stacked on top of my head. The baskets were full of bread meant for the Pharaoh, but instead, birds were eating the bread. What does it mean?
I'm sorry. The 3 baskets also mean 3 days' time. The birds eating the bread means that in 3 days' time, the Pharaoh will decide to execute you and remove your head, leaving the rest of you for the birds.
Amazingly, after 3 days, both of Joseph's predictions came true. The baker was executed, and the cupbearer was returned to his position. Unfortunately, he forgot about his promise to help Joseph. 2 whole years passed, and Joseph remained a prisoner. However, one day, when the Pharaoh complained that he was experiencing problems with his dreams, the cupbearer told him of Joseph, the man who could read dreams. The Pharaoh was intrigued and asked for Joseph to be brought before him. It was then that Joseph would read the final 2 of the 6 important dreams.
I hear you, Joseph, are able to interpret dreams. I have 2 dreams that I need to understand. In the first dream, I see 7 fat and healthy cows come out of the river. But then 7 thin and sick-looking cows came out and ate them.
Joseph listened carefully and asked about the second dream.
In the second dream, I see 7 healthy grains of wheat, and then 7 dying grains of wheat. Can you tell me what these dreams mean?
Joseph listened and explained the dream's meaning to the Pharaoh.
These 2 dreams mean the same thing. The 7 fat cows and 7 healthy grains mean that there will be 7 years when Egypt is able to farm a lot. And then the 7 thin cows and dying grains mean 7 years where nothing will grow, and there will be a famine. We must prepare now and make sure to save up extra food during the 7 good years, so that we have enough to last us during the bad years. God has sent you these dreams as a warning.
The Pharaoh listened to Joseph and believed in his wisdom. He ordered all of Egypt to follow Joseph's plan. Sure enough, Joseph's prediction came true. Egypt had 7 years of good harvest and 7 years of the harvest failing. Luckily, Thanks to Joseph's wisdom, there was enough food saved up and the people of Egypt did not starve.
Joseph, you were right. Your wisdom has saved us from these terrible times. I want to make you governor of Egypt, so you may sit by my side and help me rule.
And so Joseph the dreamer, who had arrived in Egypt as a slave, had shared God's wisdom and went on to rule over all of Egypt alongside the Pharaoh. Many years later, Joseph's family arrived in Egypt in need of help. When they came to learn that the boy they had sold and tried to rid themselves of years before had risen to become ruler of a kingdom, they were shocked. Learning of his power, they all bowed to their brother in respect, finally making sense of Joseph's dream all those years ago, in which the wheat and stars had bowed to him. And so by reading the 6 mysterious dreams, Joseph changed God's wisdom and changed history forever, becoming famous as Joseph the Dreamer. One of Jesus' most loyal followers was the Apostle Paul. He had not always been a believer in Jesus. When he was younger, Paul did not believe that Jesus was God's messenger on earth. But one day, as he was on the road to Damascus, God himself spoke to Paul and showed him that Jesus was in fact the Son of God. Since that day, Paul had become one of the most important followers of Jesus, and dedicated his life to spreading Jesus' message about loving and accepting God. He preached this message everywhere he went, and was so passionate that he caused many others to also dedicate themselves to the message of Jesus.
I myself was once lost, but then I came to understand the word of Jesus and was saved. Jesus was crucified, and yet he returned to life to offer us a chance to go to heaven. God is able to perform incredible miracles for us when we believe in him with all of our hearts.
Paul was starting to make Jesus very popular across the land, and the local religious leaders started to take notice. They didn't like that people were listening to Paul and starting to care more about the word of Jesus than what they had to say. So together, they hatched a plan to have Paul imprisoned.
Arrest him!
And so, the guards arrested Paul and took him to be put on trial.
Paul, we have brought you here today to put you on trial for spreading lies and trying to create riots in our city. All evidence we have proves that you are guilty, and we will be sending you to prison. I have done no wrong.
Paul knew that these were false claims and wished that there was someone who could provide justice. Luckily, during Paul's trial, the king was visiting. The king himself reviewed Paul's case and could see no evidence that Paul had done anything wrong. Paul simply told the king about Jesus and his message, and the king found great sympathy for Paul.
Paul, I see nothing wrong in what you have done, and in fact, I am moved by what you have told me about Jesus and his message.
But even though the king himself had found Paul innocent, this wasn't enough for the religious leaders. They wanted Paul as far away from their land as possible, so they hatched another plan.
Aha! But Paul here is in fact a citizen of Rome, so we cannot fairly put him on trial here. We must send him all the way back to Rome to be judged by the emperor for his crimes.
It was true. Paul was a citizen of Rome. And so even though the king thought Paul to be innocent of any crime, it was agreed that Paul would be put on a ship and sent all the way to Rome for judgment. Once Paul was put aboard the ship, he and his fellow prisoners had a long and difficult journey to Rome ahead of them. There was not a lot of food on board for the prisoners, and with such a long journey ahead of them, they soon began to feel weak and tired. The ship sailed through the Mediterranean Sea, stopping at different ports to drop off cargo and pick up more prisoners to be taken to Rome. As they sailed, the conditions grew worse and worse. Winter was approaching, and day by day, the skies grew darker and the waves grew higher and more dangerous. Eventually, after many weeks at sea, the ship pulled into a harbor on the Greek island of Crete. But soon after they docked, the crew decided to continue sailing to another port in Crete, where they wanted to spend the winter months. But Paul pleaded with the crew not to leave and to stay in Fair Havens and wait for the treacherous winter weather to pass.
Please, I beg of you, if we continue now, we will find ourselves facing great danger in the winter waters. We should stay and spend the winter here, and then continue our journey to Rome.
But the ship's crew did not listen to Paul's warning. Instead, they chose to listen to the ship's captain and continue the journey out to sea. When the ship left Fair Havens, the weather was quite calm, but once they reached the open sea, it suddenly turned to a great storm. Harsh winds and giant, choppy waves rocked the ship and threatened to sink it. The ship's crew tried their best to battle the storm and keep the ship on course, but soon they realized they were no match for the great hurricane. They had no choice but to give up and let the stormy winds sail the ship in whatever direction they were blowing. The ship stayed caught drifting in the storm for several days, and as food began to run out, everyone on board feared that they would not survive this journey. One night, as hope was running out, an angel of God came to Paul and shared with him wisdom that would save everyone on board. The next morning, Paul shared what the angel had told him with the crew and his fellow passengers.
I warned you. We should have stayed on Crete, and we would have avoided this terrible storm. But do not be afraid. Last night, an angel came to me and told me this: if we all stay on board this ship, we will be saved.
And so, the ship's passengers listened to Paul and hoped that he was right. They spent 2 weeks on the rocky sea, hungry and afraid, waiting to meet their fate. Eventually, they noticed a change in waters. The water seemed more shallow, and there were more rocks. The sailors realized this meant they were close to land. Some of the sailors saw this as their chance to escape and tried to secretly lower the ship's lifeboats. But Paul spotted this and warned the Roman officers.
According to God, we must all stay aboard this ship. If these men leave, none of us can be saved.
This time, the soldiers and crew listened to Paul and cut the ropes of the lifeboats. They would all stay on board the ship until it was destroyed, just as Paul said. That morning, Paul sensed their fate was about to arrive. He gathered everyone around and encouraged them to eat in order to prepare for the hardship to come.
Today is the day. We must all eat and make sure to build up our strength, for we have a difficult struggle ahead of us today. But if we find our strength and trust in God, and we will survive.
Paul was right. That day, the ship approached land. The waters were still rough, and the battered ship was quickly damaged by the rocky coast. Suddenly, the ship began to break apart, and the passengers began to panic. Some jumped into the sea and attempted to swim towards land. Others decided to wait until the ship was totally collapsed and drift towards the shore using pieces of broken wood from the ruined ship. Eventually, every single person from the ship either swam to shore or was washed up on the beach. When they each saw this, they understood that Paul had been correct.
As I told you, God promised that if we all stayed on the ship, we would all be saved. And he was right.
It turned out that the ship had been wrecked on the island of Malta. Everybody from the ship stayed on the island together as the harsh winter months passed. The locals of the island were very kind to the crew and passengers, offering them shelter, food, and company. While on the island, Paul returned the kindness of the islanders by performing healing miracles. He healed the sick and injured of the shipwreck and cured the illnesses of the local people. Thanks to his faith in God and his ability to trust God's word, Paul managed to save the lives of everyone on board the ship. His good faith was met with kindness from the locals on the island of Malta, who took care of the ship's passengers until the harsh winter was over, and they were able to continue their journey to Rome.